it comes back. You think you're feeling pretty good, and then you just go,
1 minute, Steve.
I can't get out of my own way.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I think you fight it off for like a week and a half
Yeah.
afterwards.
No, that sounds about right, because Sarah got sick first, and she,
I know, Angelica could be.
and then she started feeling better, then she started feeling worse again, and
Yeah, it's like it goes up, you think you're done with it, and then you get a little bout of it back.
yeah, I think I caught it at Hannah's 50th birthday party.
Oh, yeah.
That was a big event.
Yeah, we almost came down, but it was like 8. So,
And you have a rule about 8.
yeah, I don't last much past it.
Yep.
Because we're up at 3:30 anyway, and then on weekends we wake up at like 2.
Right? You're like, oh,
Like the one day that you could possibly sleep till like 5, no, up at 2.
that's terrible.
Close enough.
Yeah, if we go, we'd stay up.
Yeah.
But
Next to them, like,
once you sit on the couch, you're like, nah,
yeah.
I'm not going anywhere. I just filled the fire and took my boots off. I'm
Oh,
good.
I know. If I sit down, I'm done.
Yeah.
You good, Aaron?
I'm good.
Can I sit over in Catherine's seat tonight? I don't like the sound of this conversation. I want to sit over there. Can I sit over there?
That's cool.
As long as you assume the roles of the chair.
Yeah. You
Oh, well,
can take the show out.
I'm all healed, but if that's okay. I think Sean had the same thing I did, so.
Oh, does Catherine have it?
Oh, great. I'm sorry.
You're stuck in between.
And so did Dave. I mean, it's
Yeah,
About that.
it's gone around.
you
It's
ready?
been, well, it was the week we got back, right after New Year's is when we had
You
it.
ready?
I'm ready. Yeah.
It's
sit down, right?
6:30 in Readfield Gate. Please join me for the pledge. No, coffee.
Okay, yeah, great.
Good
I'll
evening.
get it from this side, you get it from that side.
Steve will be down by the weekend.
That's why I'm over here.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining our February 10th Readfield Select Board meeting. This is a regular meeting of the Select Board. Agenda item 25063, minutes from the last meeting of January 13. I'll accept the motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the January 13th minutes.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Catherine is excused. Warrants 2932. Steve?
Yes, okay, well, there we go. All right. Plug in my almost dying computer. All right, so we had 2728 first. January 1st, no, we already did that one, didn't we? Never mind. Take that back. 2930. And that's a total amount of $80,492.65. Major items on that, a couple of assessing things. One, our regular payment to Dave Ledoux, our assessor, and then $2,500 to Dirigo Assessing for, I assume that's the revow, right?
Yes.
Yep, on that. And then we had some fair amount of our cost, that on 2930 was for getting rid of the stuff we don't like. $1,538.90 to Eco Maine, $9,810.37 to Waste Management, and then $775 to Troyano, and that's all for hauling away various things that we don't want in town. And then New England Salt was the biggest one in that, 11,000 and change for more salt. So, and that was that one, and it's, again, the total amount was $80,490.65. Any
I'll
questions?
make a motion to approve warrants 29 and 30, the amount of $80,492.65.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Okay.
Thank you.
And then the next one was 31 and 32 on January 30th. and that was for $69,599.90. The biggest one, I didn't get a chance to ask you this, Eric, was for $12,335.75 to Androscoggin County.
Dispatch.
Oh, that's dispatch,
That's our
that's right.
PSAP.
Okay.
Actually, it's a special, that's our E911 call center.
Right, that's our call center, okay, that makes sense. Yep, and then $1,875.16 for Fabian Oil, $24.50 to RH&R Smith. What was that one for, Eric?
That's our audit firm.
Oh, that's the audit firm,
Yep.
okay, yep. And then $2,311.23 to Sevi and Maher Engineers. And that, I think,
They are doing a preliminary
is the salt shed, right?
workup for the salt shed,
Engineering, yeah.
correct.
Salt shed engineering, so, and that one comes to $69,599.90.
I'll make a motion to approve warrants 31 and 32 for the amount of $69,599.90.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you for that, Steve.
I'll mention it.
So next on our agenda is communications. We have 35 minutes for this. Select Board communications. Anybody have any information regarding their Select Board goals and check-ins tonight?
I think so.
Not today. Okay. Staff communication, Eric, you're up.
All right, so.
Town managers report.
Before I get started with that, I will say that we've got a couple things on the agenda that involve members of the public in new business, and I'd like to request that when the time comes after our first part here, that we maybe consider, or the board would consider, taking 25066 and 25067 out of order. And that'll,
Unless, of course, they want us
let
to till
them-
the end.
Every once in a while, I think we should just have them stay so we have,
so we have an audience?
take them last, so make them stay the whole time.
Interesting approach,
I
but
saw all the vehicles in the parking lot, I'm like, geez, did I miss
I
something?
know. I know, I thought something big was going on.
okay, so let's go through, we'll talk about my town manager's activities and just general business in town. We've been about a month since the last report, so this will be a little bit long, but I'll try to move through it quickly. We've had several general assistance requests and get more regularly. This cold weather has really put people in a predicament in certain cases. And so we've been able to help a few of them out with general assistance, but more often than not, we're using local heating assistance funds. So both of those programs are serving their purpose. And that's a good thing, I think, for the community, and we're happy to be able to help with that. We're making slow but steady progress with our technology transition, approaching it with a gradual, effort and intent to not overdo or overburden staff or get into any binds with compound issues. But in any event, we're working actively and more actively with the current provider. We have training that was taken place last week for our geographic information system platform. I want to thank Jerem for attending that. We had some key staff there as well as key volunteers. And this is going to be an interesting thing for us. We've had it for several years and use it for things like land use review, use it for project planning, road work, planning, that type of stuff. But I have a messenger article this month that talks more about it. But I believe it's going to be a big benefit to residents and also to folks like realtors in town. So hopefully it's a benefit. It's all publicly available information. It's just brought together in one spot. And it's a pretty powerful tool once you get into it. Staff training for Trio Web is scheduled for later this week. It's actually Thursday, so that may happen, may not. It depends on how this storm goes, but that's at least scheduled. We have changed all the town office PC email passwords, email and passwords, so that we have new and unique settings. And this is supported by a policy that encourages and requires, in some cases, security features that we're not going to talk about because we don't do that, but Needless to say, we have a policy behind it. Draft revisions to our technology acceptable use policy is in process. We do have a version that's a couple pages long that's in our personnel policy, but that's being updated. Transitioned a few PCs to Windows 11, and that's going to happen gradually. Maybe replaced fully, may just have software updates, depends on who's using it and what the purpose of the machine is. And added passive ventilation to the utility closet, installed a key lock. The key lock isn't installed yet, but it's in process. They have to cut out a knockout and do some work there, but in any event, physical security in addition to some of the other security measures. I had the pleasure of visiting the KV Humane Society with a member of the Budget Committee who's on their board a few weeks ago, and man, I was incredibly impressed with that facility, the work they do, and how incredibly efficient it is. I mean, it was almost like a hospital setting. The workflow, just the organization, and the level of effort that went into that place. So I'm very impressed with that, and I think we're getting a great value. It actually made me feel that we need to do more with our own side of that equation and try to do better with how we get animals to that facility. Maintenance and transfer station, winter maintenance has picked up substantially with the last several storms. We have had to order more salt, another 5 truckloads. We had 2 delivered today, more coming later this week. We've been going through a lot of material, so that's going to be adding to the budget. We'll talk about that later. RFPs were issued for gravel road work, paving work, and ditching and culvert work, and along with shoulder work. And those will be due in the next couple weeks, so we'll have them in time for the budget process. We're working on understanding and responding to the speed increases by the railroad. That's on the agenda later. The staffing situation at the transfer station is generally back to normal, and that's a big plus for us. Gives the maintenance guys the time to do their regular work. We're planning for the Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day. That is going to be in, I think it's going to be late June this year instead of July, but we'll be announcing that in short order. And we're working with KV-COG to make sure people are more aware of some of the limitations. We are going to be changing how we approach this to try to make it so it's less of a wait. We had people, some of them were there for half an hour, 45 minutes, and that's why we stopped working with Augusta on that and did it ourselves, because we had people waiting in line for an hour, and we're committed this year to making sure we pare that back and get people in and out in a reasonable amount of time, hopefully no more than 15 minutes. So. The town is getting more involved with supporting composting and recycling pilot programs at the Readfield Elementary School. I've got a meeting scheduled with the superintendent and some folks from the state of Maine and University of Maine. And basically, waste not, want not. I think it's important for us to lead by example. And so I hope that that program continues to get some attention. Let's see, summer community services, activities and projects. The Age Friendly held 2 sessions to roll out their emergency kits. Those seem to be well attended. The Low Power FM group met with some folks in Rockland. And actually it was quite a fun experience. I went with them on this one. We got to sit in on a radio show, learn about their equipment, see how they used it for community engagement. And it was just a really unique experience, and I think that it really highlights the potential that this has for community engagement for the town of Readfield, because it's different, and it can give multiple avenues for people to communicate with each other and collaborate together on projects. So that was exciting. And then work is continuing on the fairground projects, including the resubmittal of our National Guard application and the meeting of the fundraising committee. So we're not losing track of that. And we have a winter carnival planned for February 15th, and Steve's going to talk a lot more about that when it's his turn.
Is it my turn?
Not yet. I still got to finish my treasurer's report, Steve. But anyway, that's my town manager's report.
Thank you, Eric.
All
Any
right.
questions for Eric? Jaren?
So not really questions, more comments. But I'm really excited that everything's moving to Windows 11. We got 8 months to make that transition, so being ahead of it is fantastic. I think it's also important to note, because Eric talked about Trio and the GIS software, which are two most recent purchases, but also if you consider the rec, all of them were cloud-based. All of them didn't give us an option. It was cloud-based or don't use our service. I think I've been pretty consistent that message, so I just wanted to reiterate that. When it comes to the password security, I think that highlighted a lot of serious security concerns that I have, which, as Eric mentioned, we're not going to talk about on camera because that would defeat the whole purpose. But if any of the board members want to talk to me one-on-one, I'm happy to do that. But it highlighted a lot of issues for me. So I felt it was appropriate to bring that up. And then the last thing I just wanted to comment, as Eric mentioned, I did go to the GIS training. The software is amazing. I would love to volunteer to go to any committees that have any interest in utilizing that service and help them out. I'm sure Eric would be more than willing to do that, but if committees would like me to, I'm happy to do that as well.
Thanks, Jared.
Thanks, Jared.
Yeah, no, appreciate that feedback.
Treasurer's report?
All right, so this is for the month of January. Check reconciliation was completed through the end of the month. Our accounts are in balance and no unusual activity was observed. With respect to investments, the treasurer and finance officer, myself and Teresa, met with Sam Tippett from Kennebec Wealth Management to discuss the town's cemetery trust fund balances, and that was quite productive. We also talked with them about the potential for maybe transitioning our retirement services to them, but those things are just in preliminary review to see if it's even possible. Two matching maturing, CDARs are scheduled to be combined and renewed for a 6-month term beginning in February. We're seeing rates drop. I think we're about around 4.25, maybe 4.5 now, and I expect that's going to continue to have a slow slide. But there's a lot of uncertainty right now in the economy, so don't really know what's going to happen. We just know that those numbers that we saw for the last 18 months are probably not going to continue much longer. With the budget, the process continues smoothly. We've had great participation from the budget committee members, and this is a consistent support from Teresa and Angelica in helping to keep that running smoothly. So everybody's doing their part. Our next budget committee meeting is scheduled for February 12th, so that's this Wednesday, and they'll be covering the third set of departments. And I'll say this now because I'm going to be talking about it again later, but being out sick last week, I am not as comfortable with the presentation tonight as I'd like to be, but I expect by Wednesday I'll have a better footing, and I'll talk about some of the other things that are coming up that we'll be addressing over the next 4 to 6 weeks that'll give us a lot better information about the budget as a whole. So. Comments on the budget and the revenues and expenses for the month of January. The report, I said it's December, but it's actually January. We should be at 50%, 58% of the revenues and expenditures. Real estate payments are again up for the month and for the year to date, so that's encouraging. Transfer station fees are down for the month, but we do expect those to continue or to pick back up again in the spring and with different staffing at the facility. Motor vehicle revenues are up a surprising margin. I mean, I'm going to go down here and say what it was because it was extraordinary. 59% increase in the month of January over January from the prior year. Not sure exactly why that is. It could be that last January was a real, bomb and didn't do anything for us. But I think more likely there was a lot of people buying cars because they weren't sure what was going to happen with the economy. Brand new cars, yeah, we saw it. You saw that all come in. So we think that's probably more likely what it was, just consumer spending. I don't believe that's going to continue. I think it was probably a one-off, but we'll see. In any event, we're up 10% for the year, and thanks to a few good months with motor vehicles, at least that one revenue line, but that's one of our major non-tax revenue lines. Let's see, the total receipts are up slightly for the month and remain on track for the year to date. Expenses are similarly on target, and both revenues and expenditures are really looking good at the department level. And I did go through and review those, and nothing extraordinary. And yeah, a few little outliers, but that's my report for the month of January.
Any questions about Eric's treasurer's report? Steve, would you like to tell us about the Winter Carnival on
Sure.
Saturday?
Yeah, so that's coming up this Saturday on February 15th. Eric had mentioned that he had asked Jen Worthing, the rec director, to try and develop some wintertime activities. And so she talked to me and we worked together on this Winter Carnival. Will be the 15th. It's going to be, there's a big thing on the town website for people who want to see it, but it's going to include all-day ice fishing and ice skating at the Readfield Beach, starting at 8 o'clock. And we'll have several ice fishermen who have volunteered their time and their equipment to show kids how to ice fish. And they'll be setting up right outside of where people will be skating. And that's all free. They'll provide the bait. They'll provide, any kid who wants to come, they'll dig a hole for them or drill a hole for them and set a trap for them. And then that'll be their trap, to play with. And they'll, as long as they want to do it. And that's happening all day. They're getting there like I don't know, dark 30 or something, way earlier than I'm going to be there. But they'll be there all day. That's Chad White and Adam Woodford from town, both doing that for the kids. And there'll be a couple of different ice skating rinks set up, one larger one for hockey, kids who want to smack around hockey pucks, and then another one for free skating. And then from just 10 to noon, there'll be sledding on Champion Hill at Maranacook. Of course, people can stay as long as they want, and then cross-country ski lessons from 12 to 3 at Maranacook, and then a lake hockey, just pickup tournament. No, it's not like a super, organized thing with giant prizes at 1 o'clock at the Readfield Beach, and a snow sculpture contest at 2 o'clock. There's rules for that online. And just so people know, one of the reasons that we got involved is a community fund that I've been working on for the last couple of years. We have a new gear trailer that is going to be able to provide free gear for kids who need to be able to, who need that, who maybe can't afford to do certain things, but would like to try it. And so on this day, we'll have ice skates, fishing traps, snowshoes, and skis available for anybody who wants to get them for free. So, cool. It should be fun. It's supposed to be really good weather for it, too.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, but feels like winter now, which I kind of like.
Yeah.
You know?
Thank you, Steve.
No problem.
Thank you, Steve.
Next, we have boards, committees, commissions, and departments. We have a slew of minutes submitted, so, yeah, I'd like to thank Age Friendly Committee, the Assessors Board, the Budget Committee, Cemetery Committee, Conservation Commission, Library Board Trustees, Open Space Working Group, and Planning Board for their minutes.
Can we group them all together and make a motion?
We don't have to.
You don't have to make
We
a
don't
motion.
have to, and then we just, thanks. We'll do public and then. Okay. Next, we have public communication. Is there anybody here that is not here for an agenda item that would like to address the board today? Anybody online? Nope, okay.
Okay.
And are you Elizabeth Silver? Okay. You're like, please say me next.
Narrowed it down.
Yeah. So next, we're going to do, consider the appointment of Elizabeth Silver to the Cemetery Committee. Do you mind going up and telling us a little about yourself?
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Silver. I had been a 25-year seasonal resident, and 3 years ago I became a permanent resident here after I retired. I grew up on Long Island in New York and came up here for many, many seasons. I have an aunt that lives on Maranacook. So my husband and I decided to move up here, and after settling for 3 years, I want to get involved and be helpful with the community. So I was approached by Tom Maloki, said that there was an opening on the cemetery committee. And I was like, sounds like fun. Sure.
Great description of that.
So I came to the meeting in January and met everyone on the committee, and they said to put in the form, and here I am.
Thank you.
All right.
Does anyone have any questions? I'd entertain a motion.
Move that we elect Elizabeth Silver to the cemetery committee effective tonight to June 30th, 2027.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Ta-da, thank you for joining. You do not have to stay. That's part of the.
You do have to stay on the committee.
You
for-
do have to stay in the committee through June of 27. Okay, if the board's still okay with that, we're gonna move ahead to, new business, item 25066. Consider safety concerns surrounding the CSX railroad speed increase in Readfield. Eric?
Okay, so CSX has notified us that they are increasing their speed in the town of Readfield from 25 to 40 miles an hour over the entire length of the tracks. This follows some improvement work they had done to the line in the region as a whole. And there were some valid concerns raised about an increase that wasn't happening in concert or prior to any kind of safety review of the facilities that are here in town. We have, I believe it's 8 crossings, 5 are on private roads, and some of those are quite secluded and not don't have great visibility. But I think the bigger concern is the crossings on Main Street and also Loose Road and Plains Road. Because those are high traffic areas, Loose Road particularly doesn't have any kind of gate or anything like that. So we think that there's some enough of a concern and enough question about this process that Sean Roderick brought forward a recommendation that we consider this as with the select board, and I agreed that it was a pretty significant question. And so Sean and I worked to draft a letter that you folks have in your packet. We'd like you to consider that. Certainly feel free to make any changes or to say, yes, no, or otherwise, but I'd like to see the board take a step to try to, hold the railroad a little bit more to account, because they don't seem to really respond well to anybody. They give me some information, but basically we're gonna do things when we want and how we want, and we're not really worried about your concerns. I guess if I can, I'll ask Sean to come up and maybe say his piece on it before the board gets further into deliberation.
Yeah, that's great.
Please do, Sean.
All right, thanks. Hi, Sean Roderick. I live on, Zorella Lane, 4th Zorella Lane, which is on Loose Road. And I learned about this, obviously, when they were working on the tracks, that they were going to increase the speed. But they're not too, the folks from CSX, they're not good neighbors. I'm just gonna be blunt about it. Like, I live on a railroad. I chose to live there, but I didn't, they leave trains running at all hours of day and night, and you try to call anyone and it's tough luck. We can do this, too bad. But this one, and usually I just take it and accept that. But when you see a train, I talked to some folks that know, there's a big difference between 25 and 40. And there's a lot of young fellas, or there could be young ladies too, but I don't want to discourage, but a lot of young folks that like to go fast on Loose Road. And as I said to somebody, we can say they shouldn't go fast and they should be careful, but I just said this before I came here. I came from a negotiation meeting at the school. Someone's like, why are you getting involved? And I'm like, well, people were going fast on Loose Road before I was born. And they're gonna be going fast on Loose Road. Kids are long after I'm gone. And there's roads like that everywhere in America. And I've seen a lot of accidents. There's been kids go off, people pulled out, the cops always, but I just felt it was my responsibility to speak up. I mean, there's no avenue to talk to the railroad. You can call them. They generally don't call you back. I reached out to Eric in the town of, being in Readfield. I reached out to a county commissioner. I reached out to the sheriff, because in the line of work I do, if you want to try to make something better, you got to make noise. And I feel at this point in juncture, they make it very clear in their communications that it's federal commerce and tough luck town of Readfield, and even a lot of times tough luck state of Maine. And so I proposed to Eric that maybe someone larger than just a few, maybe the town would be willing to reach out to the congressional delegation to see if something could be done. And again, if they were good neighbors and willing to work with folks, then I'm not one to cry wolf, but I do think they have a responsibility to keep people safe. And Loose Road especially, I live right there, I watch it every day, even though there's only maybe a train or two, couple times, you just don't know when they're gonna come through. Some days there's multiple trains, some days it could be a week without a train. But, and if you look at the history, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the lights, I've been told this by people who live in town, I've only lived here since 2014. That the reason why the lights on Plains Road were put there is because there was an accident. And why would we wait to do, I wouldn't feel right if I didn't try to do something, so.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, I think one of the things for me was Eric kind of put it into some plain math that it's a 60% speed increase. When you think 60%, I don't
It's a
know.
little different than 25 to 40.
Yeah, it's a big jump. So I'd entertain a motion to support this. I definitely support this.
All right, I'll make a motion to support this letter, because we can discuss it more afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to support this
I'll
letter.
second that.
I have a motion and a second, further discussion?
I'll just
My
say-
discussion is just that it feels to me like, given what you say about the railroad and stuff, it feels to me like that this will be kind of, like, oh, that's nice, that's a nice letter. If it's just our town. I was just wondering if we could also encourage you to work with other towns who are being affected by this also. I think it would make a bigger difference if a similar letter was written by, Winthrop, Belgrade, all the other towns along in this area. That would make a far bigger impact, I think, because, I drive on the Loose Road too, and I can see where that would be one where it makes sense to have a light. But I'm sure that there are some in Belgrade and some in Winthrop, or, other places where the same thing would be true. And so I just thought it'd be probably more effective if we could encourage you to
Yeah, I agree.
contact other town managers and say, hey.
So
our
Steve,
select board
would you like
wanted
to
do this.
amend your motion to include that we support the town manager?
I would love
sending
to
this
do that, yes.
letter to local town
Well, I
managers
would like to
around
amend
for
that.
support?
Yes,
I'd say still send it though.
Yeah.
yeah.
You wait for everybody to get on board.
No, I'm not saying we
I
wait,
think
but
we
I'm
can-
saying we just don't stop there.
Right.
Eric, do you think that suffice if, we send the letter, but we also encourage you to send it to town
Yeah,
managers around and
absolutely.
saying, this is what the town of Readfield has decided to do?
I'm happy to do that, and I know we'll get a positive response. I think Winthrop was considering something similar anyway, because they're pretty
Yeah.
disappointed in how things are going. And,
Right.
It's not that, we all support interstate commerce. I think the issue is that they're looking to increase the speed without doing any assessment of what the impact would be before they do it. And that's just
Is there
seems
even
like
a light down on the Loose Road? Is there?
It's
There
just a
is
sign.
no light or
Just a
anything.
sign. I
No,
don't
no,
think so,
nothing.
no.
Yes,
Yep.
I don't think that's right. They ought to have some kind of warning there.
Chip?
Yeah, I just like to put
Chip.
my 2 cents in because I'm down on these roads all the
Microphone,
time.
please.
Microphone.
Sorry. You said I'm loud. Chip Stevens, code officer. On the camp roads, on Maranacook, I'm down there all the time. And it's a joke because there is no lights, there's no signals. All that's there are signs that say, this is a temporary sign, be careful, look both ways. And that's totally wrong, should be totally illegal. And I think maybe if you brought some, legality to this, that they're gonna have to indemnify the town if there's any problems. They're gonna be responsible for any death or injury if there's any problems. But take a drive down these camp roads. There's 5 or 6 of them. And when you get down through
There's
all
no
the trees and
visibility
everything,
either.
what's that?
A lot of them, there's no visibility on either.
There's
You
no
can't see the
visibility. You
light.
get to it, you look left, and there's a curve there, right after the railroad, over the river, lake, whatever.
Maranacook River.
Come by the river. But no, it's a sad joke, these signs that they put up saying, beware temporary railroad crossing. Come on. So I think some of that should be put into some rather terse language, maybe with a lawyer or whatever, and say, hey, you guys are responsible if this happens, and we expect to have some kind of statement that the town's not responsible for your negligence. That's my opinion.
Thanks, Chip. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you, Wilson.
Do you want us to sign that, Eric?
Please do. Yep,
Excellent.
and I'll get it scanned and I'll send it along to our congressional delegation and our contemporaries.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. You can leave also, Sean, if you want to.
No, you have to stay, Sean.
I'm curious.
Okay. So new business, 25067, consider a marijuana establishment application for Marijuanaville on map 129, lot 70. I'm guessing you're the applicant, and any information to get us started?
Sure, so this is a multi-part process. We have review at multiple levels. This is the final, essentially the final review. And the purpose of this is not to have the select board delve back into what the planning board did. It's really just a confirmation and have a checklist approach. We had done a couple of these over the years now. This would be the third one for the town. And I'll say that we did just put up the notice of decision on the website. So that's a really, probably a more concise summary of all the information that was in the packet. But this is, to me, is pretty straightforward. It's not quite a one-to-one replacement because they have different product offerings and things like that, and a slightly different model, obviously different proprietors. But this is the same location as the Happy Campers Cannabis that was previously at the same location. So I think that there's very little issue with the things like noise, ventilation, parking, all that stuff. It's all been pretty well squared away and certainly approved by the planning board with some conditions, and they had some special conditions around signage, but that was left in the hands of the code officers. So from my perspective, we've got a kind of a basic review here, making sure that all the elements that were required have been completed, which in my view they have, and then an approval by the select board to allow this business to begin operation. But that's my piece on it, and I guess Chip might have more to offer, I don't know.
While you're here, Chip, might as well talk again.
This is why we invited him.
Can I leave after?
Yes.
This is the fourth one. We had our first applicant that was turned down on her occupancy right before you had your meeting. So we've been through this 4 times. We know what's going on. I would just like to say this applicant has been one of the most professional and thorough presenters we've had. He went right through the planning board, which doesn't happen often, with one public hearing and one public meeting. That was it, because he's dotted his i's and crossed his t's. He has, I believe, purchased the property now that for quite a few years now has been neglected. It looked like a trash heap. The prior shop tried to get some stuff done, but they didn't own it, so they weren't getting much done. So I think they've improved the vision over there. They've improved getting rid of the junk, and I know there's more plans in it. Again, I encourage you to ask him questions about the business. He's very wise in this. And like Eric said, it's been through the planning board. It's here for your blessing, and I hope you seek this favorably. Thank you.
Would you like to?
Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. As the code officer said, my name is Frank Bernie. It's Cal McGeechan. She will actually be the caregiver at this retail cannabis store. I'll give you a little background myself. I currently own 7 that are operating. They're dispensaries. I have 1 caregiver store. I will be completely running the store under Callie McGeechan. Out of the years I've been doing it, we have a great reputation with OCP. I work with them a lot. That's Office of Cannabis Policy. I'm very familiar with all the codes, the laws, what they need. This location is, just we want to make the differentiating. It is a caregiver retail. It's not an actual dispensary. Although we are we are treating it like dispensary in the way that we are setting it up like a dispensary would be set up. The difference is, when you have a caregiver retail, you're not required to do most of the things we're doing. We do these because we think it's safe. We have complete security that's monitored 24 hours, the whole property's covered. I'm inside and out. We also have an alarm system that's linked directly to fire, police, and myself. With door alarms, motion sensor, even panic buttons. So that way if somebody comes in, there's a problem, you hit a panic button, it sends it automatically to police. We actually had that go off accidentally in Bangor once, and they show up with guns and the whole 9 yards. It's not very often these things get broken into, but it does happen, and you do get some of that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Our hours, we're looking at 6 or 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. The reason we're looking at that is because most of the people that actually use cannabis for medicine are people that are actually on the work or coming back home. People think it's like you see all these stores open from like 10 to 5 in the middle of the day. The busier hours are in the morning and night, because that's when the people actually pick their stuff up on the way to work. So that's why we're usually like those hours. Our slower times are actually in the middle of the day. But yeah, that's pretty much it. As far as the sign goes, I just spoke with the code officer a few minutes ago. And we will change the height so that the height matches your ordinance, the sign company. We have a sign company that does all my signs. They're gonna chop it down, make sure it's the right size. So there's no more asking, trying to get that, modified or whatever. We have done quite a bit of work in the property. If you want to take a walk through, you're welcome to. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
I have a question. I didn't see anything on here, but were the tanks ever taken out?
They were.
They were, right? That was done a few,
Probably 4 or 5 years ago.
that's what I was trying to remember, yeah, so, that's cool. Didn't really affect you that much, me asking that question.
that?
But it didn't really affect you much, me asking that question, but it just came to my mind. Anybody else have any other questions?
And that train goes by all the time. I hear it at least once a day.
Yeah. It does look good. You guys done a good job cleaning up the space down there, so.
I do have a couple business questions. I see on here that you're both listed as owners, but then just one of you is listed as the owner of the LLC. Right, I'm the owner of the property. Right. Callie's owner of the business. Yeah. So. I'm an agent of the business, which means I deal with OCP for her. Right, I understand Everything we do is legal. We use an attorney, Brian Winthrop. He actually does all of my stuff to make sure that we are in compliance. Very few people do that. Like when we do anything with OCP or towns, I always get the attorney involved to make sure that we're following.
So we would be approving the LLC, not the property, is that correct?
Well, if I understand correctly, the business has to be approved. It's like she was leasing it for me, it would always be the applicant. Every town is different, and I'd have to actually, you probably defer to him.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so some towns, the properties, you guys don't have it because you only have 2 allowed now, correct? There's 1 operating, would be the second.
You would be the second.
Yeah,
correct.
some towns, the business is the grandfather. Other towns, like in Waterville, it's not the business, it's the actual property. I acquired the property for that reason alone, so that somebody doesn't buy your property and kick you out because you're the only one allowed in town. So I acquired the property, and originally I was looking to put a dispensary there, and then I found out town of Readfield allows caregiver retails but not dispensaries, so we talked to attorneys, talked to OCP, and doing it this way, so it's all.
So I'd like an answer to that, if anyone does know, is if we're approving the property and it's attached to the property, or if we're approving the LLC.
No,
and
It's just the LLC. Doesn't go with
Just
the
the
property.
LLC. Okay, and then another question, I saw on your LLC paperwork, you are a management of a real estate company. That's not what you're proposing to do here, clearly.
So the business is in a real estate company?
Yep.
I'll be honest with you, there's
LLC
so many
paperwork,
LLCs out there.
1.3 purpose, the principal purpose of the LLC to be manage a real estate company.
Okay, to be honest with you, I'm not even aware which LLC this is under. I have like 12 of them, maybe more. So, I mean, that can easily be changed to do whatever it is. Probably, to be completely honest with you, we probably set that LLC up for me. That's exactly what we did. We set the LLC up for me because originally I thought, I was under the assumption we could do a dispensary. So I was buying the property. So that's probably why the original one was that. When I found out that can't happen, sure, we probably kept the building under my name, or maybe a different LLC now, and it was probably transferred to Cali, and they probably just never turned the LLC paperwork.
just from a legal standpoint, that doesn't make any difference as far as I go for taxes. I can list it as a dog grooming thing, and later on they
Right,
might say.
I understand that.
But I would change that if that makes it easier. It's not a big deal.
It's my understanding that an individual is only allowed to operate one caregiver facility.
Correct.
so
That's
I
why,
assume
that's why it's going under
That's why
her.
you did that. So I think that needs to be clarified here because your LLC paperwork
It's under,
does not appear to be accurate. Currently, right now, it is under her name, but it
Yes.
also lists you. And I think that creates a
the
little bit
LLC
of.
lists me as an
It
owner of
does,
the
yeah.
LLC?
No, list him as
As
manager.
the owner of the,
I'm listed as a manager, I'm pretty sure.
right, yeah.
But if not, like I said, I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you I've looked at every LLC paperwork. I have these made every other day, literally. I think I had 3 made last week, so I can pull that up, and if you would like something changed, I'm not opposed to changing anything. It's literally a notary and a stamp.
Yeah, the town paperwork and is
It's for Cali.
Callie is the owner and Frank
Okay.
is the manager, not owner.
It's good you picked that up. I don't think anybody's ever picked anything like that up. I was even,
I don't do that.
That's why I'm here.
yeah, no, they did, I remember now, when he's saying that, I remember that when we found out that it couldn't be a dispensary, we
Yeah,
transferred.
I'm sure that's why you did it, which is,
Because I was wondering, why would he have this?
I have no issues with it. I just want to make sure all the paperwork is correct and that we're approving something we're allowed to approve. 'Cause
No,
that would create a headache for you guys too, if we approve something and we weren't
I
allowed
get
to.
enough of them, so I try to avoid them.
Well, after reading your application, I felt like I read Gone with the Wind, so I'm certainly not gonna ask him any more questions.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm fine with it. Everybody's, Chip's satisfied and the planning
And I
board's
love answering
satisfied.
questions.
I'm
That
good
way
to go.
nobody's guessing what's going on, so I have no problem answering anything.
Just one more. You said you're going to be open 365 days a year?
We never close.
Never close. Okay.
Even with things, well, eventually we'll have a generator hooked up to the property. It's important because a lot of people that actually come every day, they can't go. I mean, I probably shouldn't say this, I get in a lot of trouble, but we all know about with the medical and the adult use and all that, man, I don't know if you know much about it. I mean, a lot of people, anybody can get a medical card, let's just be honest with you. People that are actually using it for medicine, they show up like all the time, and when stores are closed, it's also just bad for business. I've always said, if you own a business, you should be open, the first one open, the last one closed, and open other days when people aren't. That's how you get business. Can't make money if you're not open. And this is a business to us. I'm not a cannabis user. I never have even tried it in my life. I stumbled into this on an accident. What's that? Yeah, she's never done it either, so. I've learned more about this in the last 3 years.
Any other questions?
Make a motion.
No, I'm good. Make a motion.
Sure. You got it?
You got it.
I will make a motion to approve the application for, is it under marijuana bill, or do I have to go by the LLC and the,
I would go by the LLC. That's the legal entity.
yeah. I don't have the,
FKD,
There's
isn't
the
it,
right
Lee?
spot here.
okay, yeah. Is it FKD?
Correct.
Is it Berenyi? Yeah, okay. What else do I have to put in there?
As presented in the packet.
As presented in the packet?
There you go. I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
You do not have to stay.
Oh, Sean, what are you doing getting up? I thought we'd agreed you were gonna stay the whole time.
Okay, I am gonna go back to 25060, old business. Consider a second draft of the fiscal year 2025 municipal budget and warrant. Eric?
Okay, thank you.
Before we do that, I have to say, we should be doing some singing and dancing or something, because people always leave when we tell them they can. If it was more entertaining, Dave,
Right?
Could you guys try harder?
It's because Catherine's not here.
Yeah.
That's right, that's right. That's right. Nobody wants to talk to us.
All right, as I noted, this budget we've made a lot of progress since the first draft a month ago. We've had a couple budget committee meetings. But we're still waiting on some information that's pretty key. I did try to pull this together over the last 3 days, or I guess last week, and then a little bit on the weekend, and then today, because I was out sick. So I just wanted to say that if there's an issue, please be a little bit forgiving. But I feel comfortable that we're headed the right direction, that we have some good information here. There have been a number of small changes, and what I will do is just try to highlight some of those, and then we can talk about some big picture items that are fairly, I think, important to go over, and especially the one that came from the board about the possibility of using some of our general fund to offset some expenditures. And so if I go down to, I'm trying to find the right page in the document here. It was further along. It's page 16 in that supplemental packet for the budget. It is the summary of changes. And so I did adjust state revenue sharing. We'll start with the revenue side of things. We had actuals from the state, and that actually put us a little bit further ahead than my original estimate. I think I had said 375, and they were actually 385, so that was a positive change for us. I did adjust our investment income based on forecasts, and that was not necessarily in our favor because we're actually less than what I had originally thought. We're looking at about 43,000 if I remember correctly. And so going down to 3 or 4 pages after that, it's actually the last page in the supplemental packet. You can see we have the history and the forecast for our CDs and CDARs from the end of FY24 on. And FY25 is going to be a good year for us with investment income. That looks like it's going to come in right around 67,000. But we're going to see a pretty sharp decline in that, due in part because of how these bonds, CDs and CDARs were stacked, and when their maturities are, but also the rates are dropping, and we're trying to account for that, and we don't want to overestimate. So I'm looking at a drop from around 4.25 this year, the last one we can redo, going down to about 3% by the end of FY26. So I just wanted to point out that piece of revenue is lower than what we had anticipated, while state revenue sharing is actually up a little bit. So that kind of explains that piece. Then we'll go back. Here we go again to the changes. And I'll note that I did adjust transfer station, debt service, and roads to reflect actual estimates. So those are the big 3 departments that we're actually going to be talking about, along with the fire department. I adjusted that one too. I met with Lee. I'll have to make sure I add that. But those are the big ones we'll be talking about on Wednesday night with the budget committee. And those departments, we are seeing increases in most all of these. The fire department, interestingly, actually had a small decrease, in part because we've over budgeted in the past. Honestly, I'd like to see maybe another 5,000 or 10,000 come off that fire department budget, but I'm not certain, how far along Lee is willing to go, and I understand why. Because operating budgets, we want to keep them lean, and we want to have department heads looking at things and not building in a buffer necessarily. But the fire department is one area where it kind of makes sense to have a buffer for things like wages. So we could try to curb that a little bit, but then we'd also want to make sure that we had a stopgap, a relief valve. If we had a major event like the Ice Storm 98, how would we pay for that? Right now, we probably have enough to cover one event like that. But if we in the operating budget, and we don't have a lot in the reserve because we've spent it down on buildings and fire trucks and all that stuff. So I guess what I'm getting at is that there's a little bit of play there. I think that we might be able to save a little bit, but it's probably not worth the effort because of the potential consequences for $5,000 or $10,000. So something to look at. If we really come up hard on it with the budget, we could look at that and say, well, maybe we could drop 10 and put 5 more into contingency for the board, and that can be a universal stopgap, but I don't know, we can look more at that in the future. But I just wanted to point out that fire department budget as the exception, where we did have a small decrease. In the protection budget, we also have ambulance and dispatch services. And I just this afternoon left a meeting with the town of Winthrop and managers from Monmouth, Manchester, Fayette, board members from a few other towns, and Winthrop. And we're looking at some sizable increases there. They've actually not done I guess in their view, done a good job of passing on the full cost of those services to the member towns that are working with them. And so we're looking at something like $50,000 increase between those two departments, the ambulance and dispatch. Our dispatch is going to be going from like 11,000 to almost 30. So extraordinarily high increase there. They did originally propose a 3-step process, but we ended up coming down to something like a 2-step, where we'll likely see 75% of that increase come through next year, and then it'll be up to 100% the year after. So not a huge break, but a little one. And with the ambulance service, we're looking at about a $30,000 increase, and I think that was going to be in one pop. So those won't go unnoticed in our budget. They're essential services, and I understand what they're doing. I generally agree with their approach. They're trying to pass along their operating costs as well as their capital costs, similarly to what we do with the transfer station. They don't have the same granularity of information to give me absolute confidence that we're being treated fairly. I think we're pretty close, unfortunately. When I did reach
You
out
also don't
to,
have a choice.
what's that?
You also don't have a choice.
We don't necessarily, and speaking of choice, I did reach out to a private ambulance company out of Augusta Delta to see what they could offer, and they first said, well, we can give you a number, it's probably around $35 per head in town, which actually came out to within a couple $1,000s of what Winthrop was going to be charging us. And then they said, but we probably can't give you the level of service that we would feel comfortable with as far as response times and things like that. So you're right, it's not really a choice. And regionally, to stand up an ambulance service, even if we started something, with Mount Vernon, who has an ambulance, it's only for first responder services. It's not EMT. It's not full paramedic. So the cost would be astronomical. So you're right, we don't really have a choice. So I can't really fault the town of Winthrop for not wanting their taxpayers to carry an undue burden. I'm hoping that we can get a bit of a break off of what would be considered a market rate price, because Delta's there and they've got a profit margin as well. My feeling is that municipal services that are being performed in this way, interlocal, that there might be a little bit of buffer, but there shouldn't be a profit margin. So I'm hoping we can work that down a little bit, but it's not looking too promising. And I just wanted to give you all a heads up that that's going to be, even in this draft budget that was put together this morning, things have changed. And I put in $15,000 for increase and 5% on the ambulance, 15,000 on the ambulance and 5% on the dispatch, and that's not even close. So that's going to be something we're going to have to address. So going back to the other departments, roads, we do have an increase there. That's two driving factors there. One is about a 3% anticipated increase in winter roads contract costs, which is reasonable. It's far less than what I had originally expected. We did have a big bump in the salt budget because we're both planning on having a little bit more of a mix, a little bit more intensity with it. We see that we've had pretty high usage, even with the current mix that we have. And so we're increasing both the anticipated cost of that. Canada is one of our major salt suppliers, and if we have tariffs on Canada, that's going to come back in salt prices, unless there's an exception. But God knows what's gonna happen with that. So anyway, we're looking at a small increase in the cost, just as a placeholder. We're looking at increased volume and also a little bit increased usage. So we went from 50 to, I think it was 63,000, maybe 68. Anyway, a sizable increase on salt as well. So that's the winter road side of the road budget. On the summer road side, which is the maintenance side, does not include paving. That side, we have about a $10,000 increase, maybe 15, in just the operation costs of things like providing cold patch, having gravel materials delivered, the cost of ditching and culvert work that's not part of the capital plan. All those things just add up, and we've tried to reprioritize and refocus with the committee. They've done a great job of helping with that. We're gonna go over this again when we meet on Thursday, if we meet on Thursday. But we'll be going over this again in any event. And so that's the second side of this, is that we have an increase there. Overall, the road budget is looking at, if I can find it here, where we go here? Roads, I'm on revenue, I need to get to the expense side, sorry. I guess I will say revenue is up $4,000 for roads because of the tax that gets fuel tax that we get a portion of. But when I'm looking at expenses, if I can go back here really quick, road budget is up by 20,000 total, almost 21. So the net on that is about 17,000. Again, not huge, but it's about a 3.3% increase on their overall budget. But dollar-wise, it has an impact. The other side of this is the paving, but we'll talk about that in conjunction with some of the other capital items, right? I just want to go through the operating budget first. So solid waste, right now we're looking at, that's Department 70. Let me cruise over here and tell you a little bit more about that. And sorry, any questions on any of this? I'm kind of just rolling through it, but.
No, I think you're fine so
Okay,
far.
all right.
There's only 4 glazed over set of eyes.
Only 4 sets, okay, that's not bad. Maybe Angelica's paying attention, I'm not sure. But I wouldn't go that far, all right. So solid waste, right now, I'm actually showing a small, that's the other department where we had a small decrease. And I guess what I'll say is in aggregate, the fire department budget was down, but when you add in ambulance and dispatch, the protection department overall is up, so I should make that. But this, a small decrease in transfer station, I don't think is quite real, because we just had another set of invoices come in, and so we're actually about a couple weeks behind. I thought we had captured everything when I did this, but I hadn't. So we have about $10,000 already for the month of January that's going to be billed back, that came in just a couple days ago. So we're probably going to see that go away, but all in all, we're looking at essentially a flat budget for the transfer station, because we are seeing an increase in revenue, primarily for recyclables. And if there are steel tariffs, it's going to hurt us in some areas, but it won't at the transfer station necessarily, because the price of scrap steel is going to go through the roof. So a few things there that may affect this, but I expect in net that we're going to have about a flat budget for the transfer station. And we talked about a number of these other departments earlier. I did increase the county tax and RSU budgets. I had held those flat in the last draft. In this draft, I've made the county tax increase an estimate of 8% and the school RSU an estimate of 6%. So I think those are reasonable. I'm much more comfortable with the school numbers, given where they are in their budget discussions and their union contract negotiations, than I feel about the county. The county is a wild card, although we've got an inside man there, a woman. Catherine was actually appointed to the Kennebec County Budget Committee for a 3-year term. So that's exciting. So she'll be able
Lucky
to
Catherine.
Wow, she's getting done with select board and she's going to do that?
go in to do that. Yeah.
Man, she is
Well, they only meet like 3 or 4 times between February and March, and February and April. So it gives the summers free. So I said,
go girl.
yeah. But so anyway, so that'll be great. But, so those two are seeing 6% and 8% increases respectively. Unclassified and general assistance, no real changes there. Transfers, Department 96, that's where we actually will talk about some of the capital items. That's where road paving shows up, and a few other of those big items. Outside of that, nothing really substantial on the operating side. Let me go back to the final notes and make sure I didn't miss anything. I did make some adjustments to the reserve balance estimates to try to better reflect how things look with the current accounting model, where we have expenses and expenses showing up in our cash flow, but not in the budget, right? So because they're not tax impacts directly, they don't show up in the operating budget. That's a good thing, helps us see things more clearly, but I hadn't necessarily fully reflected that in the estimates that we had for those reserve balances. So I tried to do a better job of that. If you look at the page 14 of 21 in this supplemental packet, you'll see there's a few lines that are in yellow. Those are things that, until we have audit numbers, I don't feel very good about. And that's another point here, is that we will be getting better audit information in the coming weeks. I expect to have everything we need within a month. And that will give us a much clearer picture, at least for the 23-24 horizon, what our actuals are. Those will be actuals. And then we can project our estimates for the rest of this fiscal year for FY25. And then we have our planned stuff for 26. So, you know, the certainty gets less and less the further out you go, but we can reduce it by a third once we have those audit numbers. So that'll be good. And this does remind me that I did also look at debt service in the operating budget, and I did update those to actual numbers. It's a positive trend. We're actually, for our current debt, we're down about $3,000 in what we have to pay, just because of the way principal and interest kind of flows. And that's a steady trend, so we'll see less and less every year. And you can see that in graphical form on page 15 of the packet. And we may talk about this more later, but the one thing that's included in this year's operating budget would be one interest payment of $10,000 approximate for a bond for $500,000 if we go that route, and we'll talk more about that later. Let's see, what else do we have on the notes here? Adjusted ambulance, debt service. I also did make a small adjustment to nonprofit agencies. A couple of the ones that we hear from early have already requested their 5% increase, consistent with the new policy that we put in place last year. So I said, you know, with the way things are going, I expect most of those agencies will be going for the 5%. So if they all don't, that's okay, that's great. But for the budget right now, until we get those confirmation letters, I think it's safe to say 5%. And then I just did those fund balance estimates, excuse me. So now I'm gonna take a little bit of a break, and we can talk more about the capital items, because we do have several things on deck. We talked about them all. Nothing, I guess I'll put it this way, nothing has changed since we met with the budget committee and looked at that list of expenditures that the board, at that time, both boards were comfortable with. There's not a lot in there that we can really play around with that affects the operating budget, because what we have to raise for taxes are things like, you know, replenishing expenditures that we've made, keeping fund balances steady. The $300,000 that goes in for roads is probably the biggest piece. But if we want to avoid borrowing, then putting that money in every year to keep pace, or mostly keep pace with our expenditures makes sense. So that number is pretty static. The things that we can wiggle around are, you know, potentially the roads. We could bond for some of that money. The other thing that we can look at that right now was planned to not be, that was planned to be a minor tax impact through that borrowing that we'd already planned for, would be the salt sand shed. And both of those things have a high degree of uncertainty right now. So roads, we have RFPs, as I noted in my treasurer's report, or manager's report, one of them. Those are due, and the select board in February 24th, I think that's what it is, will be selecting, hopefully selecting preferred bidders. So we'll have solid information on what those costs are. We haven't actually done a bid for road work since we redid Church Road. And that was a couple of years back, and things have changed, as you know. So we'll have a good information, in part because it'll be current, but also in part because we're doing some reclaiming work on Lane Road. And there are a few sections of road coming up that we're gonna have to do that reclaim work in addition to the paving, the repaving and the rebuilding. So those components will give us the information we need to project out for the next 2, 3, 5 years of the budget. Again, we don't know exactly what's gonna happen, but we can have a much better basis than we have now. The other thing is that we don't have a very good number, other than that rough 500,000 for the salt sand shed. And working with the engineers, now that they've done some work on preliminary design, I haven't seen anything yet. They're just trying to do a basic site layout and some cost estimates. That'll be coming in, and when we have that, that'll give us a better idea of where we are. So backing up from those two big chunks, the board did ask about the possibility, this board and also the budget committee had an interest in our reserve balances, and our designated funds, undesignated funds, and also our cash flow. So I included in this packet our checking account balances over the past 5 or 6 years. That's on page 20 of 21. And what this really shows, let us summarize it, is that we have peaks and valleys. When taxes come in, we've got a lot of money. When taxes, 6 months later, we're down to next to nothing. That's not exactly right, but we're down to about $1 million. And then it goes back up again with taxes, and it's just a cyclical flow. So this is outside of any extraordinary expenditures. This is one reason why it's good to have those reserves that we have. It's also another reason why it's good to bond on occasion, because you can stabilize this. But what I'll say is this is a majority of our cash that's liquid, and it does not include right now the $1 million or so that we have in CDs and CDARs. However, when you think about the 1.25 million that we have, or 1 to 1.25 depending on the time of year and all that, that we have in designated reserves, this number, having $1 million in the bank, doesn't necessarily give you the buffer that you want. However, again, I'm gonna keep adding caveats onto this. Looking at the cash flow, looking at the reserve balances, looking at our planned expenditures, there's a possibility that we could fund maybe up to $500,000 out of the general fund, not to offset taxes, that would be the wrong approach, but to maybe pay for the salt sand shed, or maybe supplement paving, if we needed to in the next couple of years. So I appreciate that kind of direction from the board, and I've tried to pull the pieces of information together that we need to make an informed decision. What I'll say is I think it's possible. Whether I think it's advisable, I don't know yet. I don't have enough information. Like I said, I want to get real numbers, or at least close to real numbers on the planned cost of the salt sand shed. I want to get real numbers on the paving. I want to get audit numbers back. But I think that, as we continue to get the information together, we can take a look at this. And there may be a way for us to do that. Two things would happen. We would see a pretty sizable reduction in our investment interest income. It might go down by as much as half. So that could be a $20,000 hit. However, on the flip side of that, we wouldn't be paying $10,000 in interest on that bond. And then the next year is when we'd see the big impact. We wouldn't have that $50,000 or $60,000 principal and interest payment. So it could be the right thing to do, either in that large number or maybe some smaller number, and maybe we borrow less, maybe we borrow, 200 instead of 500. That's where I want to do a little bit more work and a little bit more thought on this. But I'd wanted to report out to the board that I heard what you're saying and we're working on it.
Yeah, this is Sean. I really appreciate you doing that because it was something for me. I don't want us to go back to the well 6 months later and go, oh, if only we had done that amount. And I don't want us to also just do it, and say, well, let's just take an extra 500. I think this is a really good approach right now.
Sure.
I think it makes a lot of sense where you're at. And I know you said, no matter what, it'll impact taxes, whichever way we rob Peter to pay Paul here to kind of keep this train moving. But I just think we want to do it once right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say that the 300,000 we have in reserve in this year and going forward for replenishing that paving reserve, it's close, but it's like very
close.
close.
Close doesn't feel nice.
It doesn't feel nice. So we might want to look at borrowing a little bit for that, or using a little bit out of the reserve this year and a little bit out of the reserve next year, and then maybe think about borrowing next year. So there's a few different permutations we could do, but
I'm all about paying for it, not bonding it.
not bonding it. Yeah.
But that's,
I
I don't like paying interest, kicking the can down the road. It's like paying the minimum credit card payment forever.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and the deferred price is like, ridiculous proportions of what you actually borrowed. So I like that, how you're thinking there with the salt shed or with the pavement, if we can do that. I'd rather take a hit 1 year on the taxes for, $500 and pay for it than I would to pay for it for the next 15, 20 years, so.
Yeah.
But that's just,
Yeah, no, this is Steve, and I agree with Dave on that, but I also appreciate the way you're looking at all the different sides of it. And
Trying to.
you got a lot of numbers floating around in your head
yeah.
and on your paper that I appreciate how much you dig into all the options. And I feel like it always gives us a really educated look at what the best way to go is. So, appreciate that.
Sure. Well, I guess what I'll say just to wrap up is the way things are looking, it would be, without kind of adjusting for any kind of deviation from the plan of borrowing 500,000 and paying the interest on it this year, we're looking at about a 5.2% net increase in taxes. Most of that being driven by the RSU. So I think that's not terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible. And it could be, I guess what I'll say is that it's a 5.2% increase in the expenses and revenues. The tax impact may be more, it may be closer to 7. Again, driven mostly by the RSU and the county, which are both exceeding 6. Those are 6 and 8%. The town side, I think right now is probably looking to be less than 5, but it's kind of hard to tell. But so again, if we were to change the focus on this and do something with using that balance, it might actually make it a little bit, like you were saying, Dave, a little bit more impactful this year. But it would help a lot
in the long run.
in the long run. Yeah. And I think that we can do something like that, but I just need a little bit more information. Any other questions about the operating side of things, the capital side of things?
I'm also just curious, as we go into one more year with our current plow contractor, and what could that look like for our need of a salt sand shed?
Yeah, Scott's okay with what we've got, but I don't know if the next guy or girl, the next operator will be. I think that we needed to, that facility is getting the end of its life. We could kick that can a little bit. I do think that it's possible that we could focus on the design and planning work, and it might take 2 years to get that done anyway. I think the idea of borrowing was ensuring that if we were prepared to do it in this fiscal year,
could get it done.
we can. But it wouldn't be the end of the world if we prepared for it and then said, well, if it's gonna, instead of being the spring of 2026, maybe it's the fall of 2026.
Then you'd have a couple of years to put some money aside for it. That would be even better, wouldn't it? I mean, if we could get a couple of years out of it.
Yeah, it may be. I mean, the longer you can extend the life of a facility, the more value, as long as you're not putting money into maintenance. And in this one, we're putting in $0 because
Right.
it was past that point 15 years ago, probably. But, yeah, so that's another piece that we could look at. I'd prefer not to kick that can. I think if we can, we
far.
should just own to it and.
Yeah, I don't think I mean to kick it too
I
far.
know that's not what you meant,
I just
yeah,
think
yeah.
we'd have no idea
Just have that
really
option.
soon where we're sitting with a contractor, so,
Yeah,
and that,
And most of those guys are pretty, they're not real fussy about.
yeah, I'd say that building's
salt
probably
is.
better
It's
than
not
some of the
falling
stuff.
down on them.
Right.
Yeah, but I guess one thing I will say about the plow contract is that, Scott's been really good to work with. I think that, where we're at now, I don't expect to see a dramatic increase with the new plow contract. I think that we're already pretty flush with what the market price would look like. And I don't think I'm just being optimistic there. I think we're actually paying a pretty healthy
Premium price.
premium
yeah.
price, yeah.
we get a premium service.
Well,
And
and,
that's-
and we've discussed that, I mean, that's, we kind of created our own animal. When people come to expect a service that's up here, there's a cost for it, We spoiled them.
Yeah, I mean, with winter maintenance and summer maintenance, I mean, our roads are the best in the area.
Right.
and Some of the best in the county. And, but
If
again,
you want the
we're-
best, you gotta pay for it,
You
That's
gotta pay
that's
for
how
it,
it works.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, that's it for the budget. I don't want to belabor it. I'll just say that we'll continue working on it, and the budget committee meeting on Wednesday will be interesting and informative, because I'll be making some of the same points to them, and we'll see how they respond. And I think it'll probably be similar. I think they'll like that direction, and
Just a quick question on the revenues. The cable TV franchises,
yes. Yep.
we didn't vote on that, did we? Or did we?
You-
Are you just,
tabled it.
huh?
We tabled it. Dylan.
Right,
Yeah, we're
so
taking
you're
it,
just
yeah.
figuring if we end up with it, it's luxury and just thinking to do without it for budgeting
I'd
purposes?
rather have it not be in there
Right.
and then work around it and then have it
That's
come
what
in.
I assumed you were figuring.
Yeah,
Yep,
no,
that
no,
makes
and,
sense.
just for budget purposes, you guys haven't voted on it.
Right. I couldn't remember, I said, geez, I didn't think we voted on it, but I kind of assumed it was easier to not figure it, and then if it was there, it was bonus, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the bonus at this point. All right, well, thanks for that, and, yeah, as always, if you have questions about any of it,
So
let
that's
me know.
Wednesday night? you and
Wednesday
I,
night,
Joint meeting?
6:30, I think the meeting, yep,
Great.
yep. And they'll get basically the same packet, although I will update the, ambulance and, dispatch, and that's gonna be a kick.
Okay, so back to new business, thank you, Eric. 25068, consider the pending real estate foreclosures.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say, we're down to 3 or 4. The reason I put a little bit more time on this, for the select board discussion, is that, we do have that new policy and ordinance, I guess, a new ordinance, in place, so that if we do foreclose on properties, we're effectively in automatic foreclosure mode. We've done a lot of our due diligence. We've worked the list down, from about 20 or 30 that got notices down to 2 or 3 that are on the hot seat right now. They've got until the end of the week, basically, to make those payments. I'm gonna continue to do calls, and usually this is the week when I start doing door knocking, going on site and trying to say, hey, do you have a credit card? Do you have a family member with a credit card? Let's not do this because it's not good for anybody. The process will effectively move forward from the foreclosure, if it happens, and we haven't had to do one for several years. But if it does happen, it'll move forward, and we will have that 1 month redemption period that we always offer. And that's included in our ordinance. But what that does is gives them the opportunity to pay not just the 1 year that was due, but all of their past due taxes and get caught up. The foreclosure process is always stacked back about 3 years. So right now, we're looking at 2022 taxes that weren't being paid. And the board's aware that we had a poverty abatement last week. And I appreciate you guys. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be there, but I appreciate you doing that. I think it was the right thing. Anyway, those were for 2022 taxes, and that avoided that foreclosure. And I think that'll give that person a chance to get back and start contributing again, which is what we want. So anyway, once we get to that 1 month grace period, if folks are able to pay that money, they get the house back. We don't actually file our foreclosure notice until the end of that period, and that way we can avoid some paperwork. But if that does happen, then we'll go into the process of following the new ordinance, which involves a few different options. The select board can look at the property and decide if there's any public interest. But in the end, the ultimate result is even if we sell the property, we are allowed to collect the back taxes and the associated fees, but the property owner is made whole, or as whole as they can be, by retaining the remainder of that value. So if we sell a house for $100,000 and they owe $10,000 in taxes, they're getting, and fees, they're getting $90,000. So very similar to what we did voluntarily and with a little bit of legal consternation from a few people, but with that Alaborn property several years ago. So I think that we're about where we normally are, maybe a little bit better. This time of year, we might have 4 or 5, but we are a little bit less than that now. So that's where things stand with those foreclosures. Again, there's not really much to do as far as approval or disapproval. It's really only after that process happens and only after that first month of redemption period that the board would get involved again. So,
Thank you for the update, Eric.
yep.
Okay, agenda item 25069, consider the transfer station permit applications. I believe we have 3 applications, right? We have Archie's, Galouche, and Simmons.
Oh, yeah, gotcha.
Now, when I reviewed this earlier, am I right that Archie's is not a full application?
Archie's is not a full application, so I was going to suggest that if the board would please consider a full approval for Galouche and for Simmons. And then a conditional approval for Archie's once they submit the remainder of their paperwork.
That's what I was wondering, so.
Yep, you nailed it.
So I'd entertain a motion along those lines.
Blah, blah, I was getting,
So we have a full
approval
for
for
Galouche and Simmons
Galouche and
and a
Simmons, and a
Conditional.
conditional for Archie's pending the completion of the packet.
so moved. It's ticking away out of that.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Who would reach out to Archie's for that, Eric?
That'd be me or Karen, but we'll take care of it.
You guys will take care of it.
I think part of the reason is that they are actually under new
I see
ownership.
new ownership,
Say
right?
you want him to reach out to Archie's without saying you want him to reach out to
Yeah,
Archie's.
that's right.
Just making sure there was follow-up to the process, so. All those in favor? Thank you very much.
Gonna do these dishes, Tara. Oh, I see.
Any other business, upcoming meetings, or future agenda items? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.